predict it to be 117 next week.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We're lucky to have air conditioning, but we rarely put it on. But it's roaring along.
Right. Where I grew up, it was quite, it got pretty hot in the summer, and so we're adjusting to this in Washington State. Of course, it always gets warm in central Washington, but we're breaking records every day.
We spend a lot of time in Walla Walla, and it's been very hot over there too. So
it's a favorite place.
We'll have to drive through Yakima and pay you a visit.
Oh, please. I would love that. Yeah. And Brady, I don't know if you know that I live on a cattle ranch.
I think I knew that, but yeah, how far outside of Yakima are you?
Well, about an hour. To the southwest. I'm in White Swamp.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that on the way as you go south toward Walla Walla?
Yep. I mean, there's an easy shot to Walla Walla from my house, and we love Walla Walla. We have dear friends there also. Yes, we spend time there as well. Good morning, Lisa. Pleasure to see you here this morning.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Excuse me, can we have the host assign me as the second Spanish interpreter?
Yes, I will do that right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioner Graves.
Good morning. Very special helper here for just a minute before we kick things off.
Who is this?
That's Patrick.
Hi, Patrick.
In fact, to give you the full experience. Oh, that's right. There's a popsicle there.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we will.
What?
Mama's gonna be here in just a second. I'll be fully focused.
Oh, no.
Good to see you guys this morning. Good morning, Commissioner Fain.
Good morning.
And good morning to everyone. I'm Sarah Augustine, the chair of the Washington State Redistricting Commission. I would like to welcome everyone to this public outreach meeting, the 9th one of this 2021 redistricting cycle. The topic of discussion this morning is Congressional District 9 and the legislative districts included within the 9th CD. I'll have more to say about that later, but first, let's kick things off with a video message from the commissioners. Maria?
Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Augustine. I'm the chair of the Washington State Redistricting Commission, recently chosen by the 4 voting members of the commission to facilitate and to lead this effort.
Hello, everyone. I'm Commissioner April Sims.
I'm Commissioner Joe Fain.
I'm Commissioner Brady Pinheiro-Walkinshaw.
I'm Commissioner Paul Graves. I'm one of 4 voting members recently appointed by the state legislative leadership of the Washington State Redistricting Commission.
Once a decade, we redraw our congressional and state legislative district boundaries using data the Census Bureau collected last year, reflecting changes made to the population in the last 10 years.
States across the nation handle redistricting in different ways.
In Washington, the state constitution and law establish an independent redistricting commission.
As commission members, we've committed ourselves to a process that is open,
transparent,
and credible.
These maps will belong to all the people of Washington.
With that in mind, we encourage you to help us draw your WA.
The commission will hold virtual public outreach meetings focused on populations residing in each of Washington's 10 congressional districts,
as well as additional outreach meetings to be scheduled soon.
Live Spanish and American Sign Language interpretations will be available for each of these meetings.
With your unique insights about the community, we will work to ensure a credible redistricting process resulting in maps reflecting fair representation for all Washingtonians.
Please take part. After all, it's really your map.
So come help us draw your WA.
Help us draw our WA.
Come help us draw your WA.
So please help us draw your WA.
Thank you, Maria. For those of you from the public joining us today, welcome again. It is my goal as chair to facilitate a process that is as participatory, fair, and equitable as possible. I will endeavor to engage communities across Washington as fully as I can and to hear and address your concerns and requests. Throughout our tenure as commissioners, we will hear public comments that are important. We will listen to you. I will do my best to synthesize those comments, and we will endeavor to respond as we are able. Still, it is possible that you will bring forward in your public comments ideas, requests, and injustices that we may not be able to address. We will certainly deliberate on the issues where we do have jurisdiction. Where we don't, I will do my best to refer you to those who may be able to respond more effectively. I want to begin today by reviewing the purpose and the values of the commission. Together, as a commission, we have agreed on the following values and mission: to provide an open, transparent, credible process that is grounded in statute and where all voices are welcome and there is access for everyone. To conduct ourselves with transparency, respect, and civility, where commissioners will participate and negotiate in good faith. And to meet the deadline outlined by law and produce the best possible maps. You may be aware that because of the pandemic, this redistricting cycle promises to be a challenging one. Well, we should have received the data from the Census Bureau that we need to begin to redistrict by April 1 of this year. We don't expect to have that data until late August. Nonetheless, in late April, the Census Bureau did deliver the president and the nation the apportionment data, which told us which states would gain seats in the US Congress and Electoral College and which would not. Based on that data, in the last decade, the population of our state grew by 14.6% and added approximately 1 million residents. Despite that population growth, it did not change the number of congressional seats we are entitled to. Washington will continue to have 10 representatives in the US House of Representatives. Based on the population growth in the state, our job as a redistricting commission is to distribute as equally as is practical the population among 10 congressional districts and 49 legislative districts. Based on the census data from April, Washington had a population of 7,705,281 residents as of April 1st, 2020. Therefore, we need to draw 10 new congressional districts that are compact, contiguous, and convenient, and made up of approximately 770,528 residents, and 49 new legislative districts that are also compact, contiguous, and convenient, and made up of approximately 157,251 residents. Statute also instructs us, in as much as it is practical, to minimize drawing district lines that cut through counties, municipalities, or communities of interest. And the Commission is committed to applying these principles while we try to create equally proportioned districts. So while we know the overall population of the state according to the census, we don't yet know the particulars of percentage growth across neighborhoods and counties. State population estimates of the last 10 years do give us a relatively good idea of where our 7.7 million residents live and which districts will need to get larger in area to add more residents and which districts will need to get smaller in order to shed some residents. And as we add or subtract neighborhoods from one district, it will cause the need to make corresponding adjustments in the neighboring districts. To show you broadly, Maria, can you please put up the first map? This map shows Washington State and its 10 congressional districts. The darker the brown color, the more the district needs to grow in size, and the darker the teal colors, the more the district needs to shrink in size. So regarding the topic of discussion today, the 9th congressional district, the map indicates that the 9th CD, according to state population estimates, has slightly more residents than the needed 770,000 to make it proportional. Depending on the final number we get back from the Census Bureau, it looks like this congressional district may have to shed a few residents. Now, next slide, please, Maria. The 9th congressional district includes legislative districts 11, 27, 30, 33, 37, 41, 47, and 48. Based on state population estimates, we can see that the 37th, 41st, and 48 have more than the 157,000 residents that each district should have, while districts 11, 27, 39, 33, and 47 have less than the needed 157,000 residents. Thank you, Maria. So that's just a brief overview of the challenges that your redistricting commission faced this year. In essence, commissioners have to create a new puzzle out of the state, and the puzzle pieces have to contain nearly exactly the same population. As we make one puzzle piece smaller, its adjacent puzzle pieces will need to absorb those additional areas, meaning that every time a boundary is moved, it creates a cascade of changes in surrounding districts. I was at a conference 2 weeks ago where Secretary of State Kim Wyman linked our task as similar to solving a Rubik's Cube, which is an apt analogy. So the purpose of our meeting today is to listen to your input about your community and how to ensure that the districts are fairly balanced in terms of population, but also respect shared community interests. The commission may not be able to meet every interest, but as commissioners are trying to weigh the trade-offs inherent in this process, your opinions are welcome and vital. As of the end of the workday yesterday, we had more than 40 individuals who had signed up to testify. We're going to invite individuals in groups of 4 to come forward and testify. Each individual will have 2 minutes to offer their comments. After 4 people have testified, we will see if the commissioners have any questions of the testifiers, and then we will move on to the next group. With that summary, Sean, let's begin. Please call the first panel.
Could I jump in, Commissioner Augustine, just with a quick
Sure.
point of personal privilege as we dive in? I just want to thank everyone for coming out today, and just wanted to also recognize that we're all here in Pride Month, and today's Pride. So thank you all for being here on a day that celebrates a lot of rights for a lot of Washingtonians. So just wanted to take a moment and recognize that. And so we're hearing a lot of testimony today, so thank you. And also just hope folks are keeping safe in this heat wave.
Thank you, Commissioner Walkinshaw. Sean?
Good morning, Commissioners. Our first panel will be Dan Rystrom, David Kolskar, Tiffany Mendoza, and Adam I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce your last name, Philosophy. We will begin with Dan. If you can turn on your video and begin your testimony.
Hi.
Good morning.
Dan, I'm glad you're here.
Yes, I'm kind of living in the Fairwood area. We're in an area called no man's land. We've been shortchanged, it seems, moved around from where the county, are we the city of Renton? And we find that even in the congressional district, we're totally ignored. And I think it would be better to move the Fairwood community north towards the east side. That community I identify more with. And the vast people here are blue collar people of color. And we don't have any examples representation with our congressman we have now. So that's why I'd like one better, Mr. Smith, in my opinion. Two of us went down there to talk about his congressional office, and he wouldn't even make eye contact about a concern we have about blue collar people of color. I'm not going to go into it because I don't have time to talk about it, but I'm asking Fairwood area, that's 98058 zip code, be included further up in the east side. I think that better represents our community members and what we need, and that would help everybody out, especially the blue collar people here, people of color, and the working poor. We have a much better identity north because we also drive there for work and commute there. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments. Sean, if you'd call the next speaker, please.
Absolutely, Chair. Next, we have David Kolskar. If you can turn on your video and begin your testimony, please.
All right, just one moment. I don't know if my light's working again.
Tiffany, I see you have your video on. You look like you're ready. We'll begin with you and we'll come back to David.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you so much for your time. My name is Tiffany Mendoza. I use she, her pronouns. I'm testifying because I grew up in the 9th Congressional District, spending most of my life in Kent, Auburn, and Des Moines. I've seen how South King County has shifted with increased diversity and the needs that come with supporting new population growth, especially from impacted families who have been gentrified and pushed into South King County. This is emblematic of the shift in demographics needs across the state, from Spokane to Vancouver to Gibb Harbor. So I want to echo requests around ensuring strong representation of communities of color and honoring the sovereignty of tribes by keeping them intact. And at the same time, I would like the Commission to honor these populations by ensuring people of color are both adequately represented throughout the state with a delicate balance of ensuring districts with strong majorities of people of color, while not packing them all into a couple of areas. I want to also thank the Commission for this important preliminary outreach. It's critical to gain that broad insight into areas across the state. Since the census data has been delayed, I know that there also might be a delay as to when the maps get created, and want to reinforce the importance of going back to people and getting their insights as those maps get further developed. As such, I encourage the Commission to ensure similar efforts after initial maps are created. And finally, I do want to share my concerns around Commissioner Fain being a part of this process after credible sexual assault allegations were shared publicly. I recognize that it's unlikely he will step down at this point, but I would like it stated that it's unfortunate that his presence has created a distraction of time and energy from communities, especially from sexual assault survivors, when the focus should be on how they can best be represented. So again, thank you so much for your time and have a great day.
Thank you for your testimony. Sean, if you'd call the next speaker, please.
RM, if we can have you turn your video and begin your testimony, please.
Hi, good morning, and thank you for taking our testimony. I really appreciate and respect the process that you've put into place here. I've been living in Columbia City since we moved to Seattle. So I've been in the 9th district this whole time. I've seen a lot of changes in our neighborhood and further south. And I really, really appreciate the fact that there is at least one majority people of color district in our state. But I feel like it's at risk based on gentrification, based on demographic changes. Even if it was barely a majority people of color district in after redistricting in 2000, and we need to maintain it, and we need to maintain it guaranteed against the changes that will happen in the next 10 years. So it needs to be seriously enhanced as a majority person of color district in order to maintain so 10 years from now when we redistrict again. And also one of the requirements that you all have is to keep communities of interest together. I honestly don't see a whole lot of shared interest between, say, Mercer Island and Bellevue versus Renton or parts of Rainier Beach, etc. So that is kind of a mishmash that has come together over the years that I really, really would like you to reconsider. Also, finally, I want to point you to a website. Some of us created a petition called preserveour9th.org with a number 9. We have collected signature organizations, at least one elected official, and we will collect more signatures and pass this on to you before the end of the summer. And I would like you to please take those into account. Again, the site is preserveour9th.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony. Sean, if you would call the next speaker for this panel, please.
Yes, our final speaker will go back to David Kolskar, if you're able to unmute and begin your testimony, please.
Sure. I don't know if I have to be on camera or not, but my camera isn't really working right now. So
go ahead.
That's okay. Go forward.
Yeah. I'd like to just sort of echo a little bit like of the last commenter. I do feel like at least our district is kind of like a hodgepodge of sorts. It's maybe like the leftover district from the last go round, I feel, the 9th. Just in fairness, like the map that was shown at the beginning with the, I believe the districts in Eastern Washington needing to kind of like gain population. I would imagine like perhaps like the Wenatchee and Kittitas area would need to maybe absorb like into the 4th or the 5th or something. So coming over the Cascades, there's a lot more population in Western Washington, as we know. But I would just like to maybe suggest, like, coming from, a resident of maybe 5 years here, so I don't necessarily want to say I have all the same experiences that some of our other commenters have had, but maybe like south of the Ship Canal, Seattle, with South King County, try to catch some of the communities like Renton, as well as like down to Burien, Federal Way, if that's maybe a better fit. And then places like a Bellevue or Mercer Island, maybe switch into like the 8th kind of a district. And then perhaps like the north of the Ship Canal part of the Seattle goes up north to Snohomish, and maybe some of the east side kind of sprinkles into there. I don't know how that may add up in the population or so, but that's just kind of the gist of what I was thinking about.
Thank you. We really appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for sharing your thoughts with us. I would like to ask the commissioners at this point if you have questions or comments for the folks on this panel. Commissioner Graves.
I do. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And this will be quick questions for, thank you for the four of you for some really great testimony. And then this will probably be a recurring question, I imagine, for the rest of this hearing here. But as we try to balance two things that are in tension, having a majority person of color district, but then making sure we're not packing people of color inappropriately. I'm interested to hear from the community about where we balance that and which of those, if we're faced with the choice, we should be trying to focus on.
Thank you. So I would like to ask the folks on this panel, if you would just raise your hand and I'll recognize you. Thank you. So I see Aram has his hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess my thought on that is, you know, there is some gerrymandering happening in other states where they pack all people of color into one district to kind of dilute their vote across multiple districts. I don't see that as the risk here. I may be wrong on this, but what I saw on numbers was that the 9th was only 51% people of color 10 years ago. Now, it may be a little more, it may be a little less because a lot of people of color have been gentrified out of Seattle into South King County. At the same time, a lot of new arrivals who come here for tech jobs, et cetera, are moving into those areas too. But I don't think the packing in of like making a district be 90% people of color is the risk here. I don't know. It just, that's, you guys see the numbers more than I do, but that is my sense of it, is that it's more important to put in some margin against future gentrification versus, oh, we can't go above 60% because that then puts too many in one district. I don't know. That's just my personal thought.
Thank you. Others on the panel, would you like to respond to Commissioner Graves' question? Okay, then let's move on to Commissioner Fain.
Thank you. I just heard a question or a comment about the East Side and communities of color, and Bellevue is the largest majority minority district in the state of Washington. And so I'm trying to, is there a particular minority population that should be prioritized moving into the 9th? Because of shifting the 9th out of Bellevue actually makes it less diverse in many cases. So just wondering if there was any feedback to that.
Thank you, Commissioner Fain. So question to the panelists, if you have a response for Commissioner Fain, if you would raise your hand and I'll acknowledge you. Okay, so I see Tiffany has her hand up and then David. And so let's start with Tiffany and then David. Thank you, Tiffany. Go ahead.
Thank you for that question. I actually didn't make that comment, so I think David will probably speak to it better. However, I have, from living in South King County, I think that it's not just about the diversity in terms of race, but also in terms of the impacts in terms of how the shifting demographics and increased gentrification into South King County populations, the differing needs as well. And Bellevue having differing shifts based off of the tech sector. So that would be my guess, but David could also respond.
Thank you.
Thank you. David, please go ahead.
Yeah, I also had a similar feeling too, because like with Bellevue, Mercer Island, Newcastle, places like those, they just don't really match the rest of the district, I guess. It's a little bit more like of a working class district. I'm not saying that you have to kind of like really make a hard cut, because obviously there'll be some areas that kind of like be borderline communities, I guess, it's the way of putting it when you're making the map. But my thing would just be more like, you know, there's many differing like communities in the state, and there's also like a similar like, you know, regional thing of interest. Like I feel like I have a whole lot more in common with like the Renton area in South Seattle than I do with perhaps like, you know, even Mercer Island, which is just where I can actually visibly see a lot closer. So it's like maybe just including like parts of those, and maybe like as well as like places like Kent. Also with like the West Seattle area, I think maybe be an easier like sort of like community of interest, because I know Seattle's grown, so I don't know how much, if it's big enough for a district or not, but I also don't think Seattle maybe needs.
So I'm sorry about that, that you were cut off. We have just a minute for response. And so I will now acknowledge Aram, if you'd like to respond to Commissioner Fain's question.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Very good point, Commissioner. I was the one who raised that, but I was raising Bellevue and Mercer Island more in the context of the other requirement you have, which is keep communities of interest together. And I feel like even though Bellevue is has a large people of color contingent, a lot of those, like myself, are in the tech sector. And it's a very different community of interest. It's a very I know in this country we don't like to use the word class, but I'll use it anyway. It is not the same working class requirements and needs that South King County has. So even though it might balance out a little bit in terms of lowering the people of color percentage if you remove Bellevue, certainly not Mercer Island, but Bellevue, that can be made up for by pulling in, say, Burien, I don't know, or parts of that area, that around Burien. So that was more a comment around the communities of interest versus actual majority minority district.
Thank you.
Thank you. Others on the panel who would like to respond to Commissioner Fain? All right, so let me ask commissioners if you have additional questions for this panel. Thank you. Seeing none, I would like to excuse the panelists. Thank you for your time being here with us. And I want to also encourage you to submit additional comments in writing to our email address, and we would love to see that as well. So Sean, if you would call the next panel, please.
Absolutely, Chair. Our next panel is going to be Timothy Liu, Daniel Stanton, Jackie Bushuk, and Catherine Schultz. We will begin with Timothy.
Hi, thank you. My name is Tim. I go by they, them pronouns, and I moved to the Seattle area, the Puget Sound area in the past 10 years just because of school. I lived in Beacon Hill last year, but now I'm in Bellevue for family reasons. And I share similar concerns about keeping Washington 9th District majority POC. And this past 10 years, as this county, as this region has changed so much with gentrification in Seattle and the COVID pandemic, it's just really reinstated like the need as to why we need a majority POC district. And I feel like I'm kind of self-sabotaging myself here as a current resident of Bellevue, but if it means cutting out my neighborhood to keep Washington 9th majority POC, please cut me out. Please cut me out, because that matters to me more than me saying, yay, I'm in a majority POC district, which I would love, but I care more about the needs of the majority POC communities in South Seattle, South King County, from Beacon Hill to Federal Way. I care more about those communities more than my own interests. And so yeah, that'll be my concern. But I think one concern I do have, which as much as I would love the district to stay majority POC, I know population-wise, Bellevue has 150,000 people. So that's going to be a lot to cut out if you want to change the size of the district, which, I mean, please cut me out if it means keeping the district POC, but majority POC. But I think as a logistical concern, Bellevue is a big portion of the population of our district. So that is something that I have a question about, which I don't have an answer for. But yeah, maybe substitute some neighborhoods in Bellevue for Burien, White Center, neighborhoods in West Seattle. That's just my best guess right now. So thank you so much for letting me share.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments. Sean, if you'd call the next speaker, please.
Yes, Chair. Our next speaker will be, I see Daniel, if you have your video on, if we can begin with you.
Hi, my name is Dan Sanson. I'm active in my community here in SeaTac, and I've owned a home here since 2006. What I've noticed being amongst the community is and I'm not sure if this is the right place to mention this, but the 33rd Legislative District is very wide. It's a very large, and along the edges have some really squiggly lines that sort of look like the kind of stuff that they talk about in the news when they say gerrymandering. I'm not really sure that what the intent was, whatever it is, but noticing things like Renton being split across several jurisdictions, Kent being split. I was hoping that I echo the concerns of trying to maintain the 9th Congressional District as the majority POC. As a person of color, gentrified out of the 7th District, growing up in Seattle and coming to South King County, that's very important to me. I wonder how the 9th could be better served if there was more of a consideration of the contiguous nature of the municipalities in South King County. Thing also being a transportation aficionado, Renton seems to bring up a lot of times that they don't they don't get the same consideration for federal transportation dollars. I'm not sure how that might have an impact, but I would just want to make sure that that is considered when you decide to draw the maps.
Thank you, Dan. We appreciate your time and your words. Sean, if you would call the next speaker, please.
Absolutely, Chair. I see Jackie is up next and has the video on. If you can begin your testimony.
Okay.
Yes, I'm a resident of Kent in the 33rd district also, and share some of the same concerns as Dan Sanson. I am a longtime union advocate, so I'm really concerned about workers in my community, and also diversity is very important to union members. So I just want to talk about the city that I live in, and that's Kent. We're the 4th largest municipality in the greater Seattle area, and we're the 6th largest in Washington state. But I'm also proud to say that Kent in the nation is the 8th most ethnically diverse city in our entire country. And so we rank higher than both Renton and Federal Way, which are the top 3 in our state. So when the city of Kent is split in half between the 47th LD and the 33rd LD, it creates a huge issue for the population of the city of Kent. It also creates a huge issue for the leadership of the 33rd LD. So for instance, we have 6 cities besides part of Kent. We have Burien, Normandy Park, Des Moines, SeaTac, Renton, and we have 3 different school boards as a result of that: Kent, Federal Way, and Highline school districts. So these local races, we have, you know, maybe not the most highest number of local municipalities to deal with, but if not the highest, we're in the, you know, pretty close to the top. And it just makes it really difficult for us to function effectively because of the nature of all of those large local races that we're involved in. And so it was mentioned previously about being equal as practical. And I don't really think that the 33rd LD is.
I'm so sorry that your time has elapsed. Please do submit your comments to us in writing. And if you hang around, perhaps the commissioners will ask questions or comments for you. Sean, if you could call our final speaker for this panel, please.
Of course, Chair. The final speaker will be Catherine Schultz. If you can begin your testimony.
Great. Hello, Commission. Good to see you all this morning. My name is Katie Stoltz. I use she, her pronouns, and I am zooming in today from Lake City in North Seattle, but my roots are in Congressional District 9 in Kent and Federal Way. I'm joining today as a representative with the Redistricting Justice for Washington Coalition. We are a group of organizations from across the state that have been advocating for an accessible, transparent, and equitable redistricting process over the last 2 years. We thank the Commission for your commitment to public engagement for these hearings and this work. Since our coalition came together, we've stated these guiding priorities, and that will continue, specifically keeping Indigenous communities together as a prioritized and protected community of interest, maximizing majority people of color districts, and keeping communities together. Specifically, Congressional District 9 is the only majority minority congressional district in Washington state, and we are here. I follow the same thoughts as many of the folks today testifying, that we protect and preserve the 9th congressional district. We do have a couple key ways we'd like to see this happen, and we'll follow up specifically with maps as well as key feedback from all of the legislative districts. But a couple of ways we'd like to see that is really empowering and consolidating the people of color populations of South Seattle and South King County as the base of Congressional District 9, adding the Muckleshoot community to the Congressional District 9 and making sure the Muckleshoot tribal community is not divided. And then specifically lifting up, as someone who grew up in South King County and still considers Federal Way and Kent my home, I know that the interests, concerns, and communities of South King County are different than the interests of Mercer Island and Bellevue communities, and I encourage the Commission to listen to these recommendations of specifically looking at adding communities in Auburn and White Center and East Burien to CD9. Specifically, I also stand in solidarity with survivors and share concerns that Commissioner Fain's presence on the Commission has limited the ability for survivors of sexual assault to join us in this process and focus on giving community feedback. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. And so at this time, I'd like to ask the commissioners if you have questions or comments for the members of this panel. Okay, seeing none, I would like to excuse the panel. Thank you very much for taking the time to be with us. Please do submit your comments in writing if you wish. And Sean, if you would please call the next panel.
Of course, Chair. The next panel will be Andrew Hong, Ann Croker, Justin Englund, and Kate Kruller. We will begin with Andrew.
Hi all, my name is Andrew Hong. I'm a lifelong resident of South Seattle in the 37th LD and in the 9th CD. And I'm echoing everything that's been said here today. We must have a majority people of color congressional district in the 9th. And we also must empower people of color that already exist in the 9th by increasing and maximizing the POC population here. So addressing Commissioner Fain, your question, I do think we need to be redistricting out Mercer Island and Bellevue, which are, wider and also just wealthier communities that have different interests than the rest of the 9th, and specific areas I think that we could be adding in that will actually increase POC population are White Center, definitely parts of Burien, and then also looking towards like POC migration patterns. Auburn is getting increasingly diverse, and I think over the next 10 years, adding Auburn will increase the diversity of the 9th district. And on an LD level, we want to be increasing the number of majority people of color citizen voting age population districts, going to discern citizen voting age as, people who are a citizen of voting age, because those are the folks that are actually going to be electing representatives. Specifically, the 11th legislative district is an area that we can increase the POC population there to make it a majority POC CVAP. And then final things I just kind of want to emphasize that the commission might easily kind of overlook is the Chinatown International District in Seattle. Looks like it's a part of downtown Seattle. It's a very different community. It's majority Asian, majority low income. That should stay in the 9th and the 37th district. And then also keeping in touch with migration patterns of people of color. Over the next 10 years, we're drawing districts for the whole decade, not just 2021. So when drawing these lines, we should be keeping in mind those trends. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Sean, if you'd call the next speaker, please.
Absolutely, Chair. Our next speaker is Ann. I see your video's on. If you can begin your testimony.
Yes, thank you. My name is Ann Craker, and I live in Des Moines, the Redondo Beach part of Des Moines. I call it the dog leg part because we have the same confusing issue with that Jackie said for Kent, where we're in 30th and 33rd is part of our city, and 30th is actually mainly Federal Way, and it becomes confusing, like we're not really following city, the Federal Way issues, but we kind of have to be part of that district, to be engaged. And every time this does happen, it really is. I add the fourth one to compact, contiguous, convenient. I add confusing. And when you have voters who are confused, they are less likely to vote. And even when they're engaged voters, they have difficult time. And when the 9th district currently has a bit of Pierce County, and I saw a problem with that when there was a caucus time. And they had to be separated out because their governance was somehow different than the King County people. So that was weird too. And I just had never understood that this could happen, but I've seen it happen and everyone has talked about it here. I also just want, so cross county and cross city lines, difficult. The other part that I just wanted to respond to is we lived in Bellevue for 35 years and now live in South King. And the difference is like night and day. Every time we go back to Bellevue, which is once a week for something that we need to do, I feel like I'm stepping into different worlds. And not to say that there's anything wrong with that, but it isn't recognized. And I do feel that South King is much more representative of the place I would like to live in general, where everybody seems to be more represented, and so they should be more represented. Thank you.
Thank you, and we appreciate your comments this morning. Sean, if you would call the next speaker, please.
Of course, Chair. Our next speaker is Justin. I see your video's on. If you can begin your testimony.
Hi, hello, thank you. My name is Justin England, and I'm a lifelong resident of Kent, Washington. Our communities in South King County, like Des Moines, Federal Way, and Kent, make up roughly 30% of the county's population. But despite that, none of our 4 representatives in Congress actually live in one of our communities. Our representatives in King County are from West Seattle, Medina, Bellevue, and Sammamish. These are communities that do not have the same fundamental economic interests as us here in South King County. South King County is a more diverse, lower income, lower resourced community than where our congressional representatives are from. The current boundary between the 8th and 9th congressional district is inappropriate because it disenfranchises voters here in South King County. The new 9th congressional district should encompass all of the communities of Kent, Auburn, and the Muckleshoot Reservation, just for a few examples. With our current boundaries, some of the most low income, some of the most diverse communities are split in half. Where I live in Kent, we're split between the 8th and 9th congressional district. So if we have a problem that we need to go to an elected official for, who do we turn to? Do we turn to someone that has to compete with the interests of Bellevue and Mercer Island? Or do we have to turn to someone who has to also balance the needs of people who live in communities like Ellensburg and Wenatchee? It just doesn't make sense when our highest need communities aren't put into a single voting block. So that's why I would urge the Redistricting Commission to adopt a model where we have a majority POC district here in South King County, where we have a district that actually represents the needs. If we continue to protect incumbents with our new congressional district maps, South King County may go another 10 years without adequate or meaningful representation. Thank you.
Thank you. We sure appreciate your time and your comments. John, if you'll call the next testifier, please.
Absolutely, Chair. Our last testifier is Kate Kruller. If you are able to turn on your video and begin your testimony.
This is Kate Kruller. I'm honored to have an opportunity to speak with you today. I come from the 11th district. I've lived in the city of Tukwila for 30 years, and I just want to weigh in on a couple of things. The last time we redistricted, the redistricting process was weaponized to actually go around my senator's house and put her up into the 37th, which caused her to resign as a senator. And she was the first person of color senator to ever be in office in the legislature. So that's one comment. Be mindful of what some of these lines are doing to our electeds. And second, I would like you not to bifurcate the city of Tukwila in any way, shape, or form. We're a small city of 20,000 people, and we're one of the most diverse school districts in the nation, and we don't need to have somebody try to divide us systematically through this process. Otherwise, I've seen some drawings that were kind of pushing Seattle up into Seattle and pushing this district out into White Center. I think we'd rather stay more consolidated with Renton and the Kent areas as is possible. I don't have a long speech. Just do what's practical and help these towns who have, really diverse and frankly harmed communities to stick together politically. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. We appreciate your time and your comments. I would now like to ask members of the commission if you have questions or comments for this panel. Okay, I think Commissioner Walkinshaw has raised your hand. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Commissioner Augustine. I just thank you all for the thoughtful testimony. I think these are really great points. So just thank you, Kate. Thank you, Justin. And Anne, nice to see you. And thank you for joining us for testimony.
Thank you, Commissioner Walkinshaw. Other questions or comments from the commissioners at this point? Okay, seeing none, I would like to excuse the panel. Thank you for being here. Please consider submitting your comments in writing if you wish. And Sean, if you would please call the next panel.
Absolutely, Chair. Our next panel will begin with Neri Petty, Fiona Murray, Mark Brushala, and Jacqueline Romeo. If we can begin with Neri.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Nari Petty. I go by she, her pronouns, and I'm a Kent resident in the 47th District. I'm testifying today as a representative of the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle as part of the Redistricting Justice for Washington Coalition. I was born and raised in Seattle, and as a young Seattleite, I took pride in a liberal city that embraces diversity until my family and other POC families were starting to experience housing instability and eventually were displaced in the South King County area. Meanwhile, our wealthy and or white counterparts remained in Seattle. And I often question how gentrification was even allowed to happen in a city like Seattle that promotes equality until I realized the lack of BIPOC representation in our districts. And communities of color have been separated into different districts and surrounded by wealthy white communities with entirely different interests, draining BIPOC communities' political power. And to avoid discriminatory political issues such as gentrification, it is essential for our communities of color to have a strong voice in our government by gaining equitable representation through majority POC districts. So today, I asked the Commission to concentrate on consolidating the BIPOC populations of South Seattle and South King County as the base of the 9th Congressional District, and by removing majority white and wealthy suburbs of the East Side, such as Bellevue and Mercer Island. By maintaining predominantly BIPOC communities in the 9th CD, you can ensure BIPOC communities can elect representatives that prioritize their interests and will have equitable representation in Olympia. Thank you.
Thank you. We sure appreciate you being here this morning. Sean, if you would call the next speaker, please.
Absolutely, Chair. Our next speaker is going to be Fiona Murray. If you can turn on your video and begin your testimony.
Good morning. My name is Fiona. I was raised on the east side of Seattle and have lived in Northeast Bellevue for the majority of my life. Though I'm proud to call the 9th District my home, when I think about areas with political, demographic, class, and geographic similarities to where I live, I think of places like Redmond, Kirkland, Issaquah, Sammamish. I believe that the majority of the constituency within the current boundaries of the 9th Congressional District are more closely aligned with areas and cities like Auburn, Burien, South Seattle, Kent, and the Muckleshoot Reservation. Redrawing the map, including some of these areas in the 9th District, in the place of Bellevue would better consolidate the state's only majority people of color district. Furthermore, the interests of constituents like me from Bellevue would be better served by putting us in a district with other East Side cities and areas, as presently the East Side is split between 3 different congressional districts, the 1st, 8th, and 9th. Bellevue should be added to either the 1st or the 8th Congressional District so that the East Side is split between 2 congressional districts instead of 3 as it is now. I also do not support splitting the city of Bellevue between 2 different congressional districts. A map incorporating these ideas would better serve and politically empower all people residing in the current boundaries of the 9th Congressional District. Thank you all for your time and your hard work in redrawing our districts.
Thank you, Fiona. We appreciate you being here this morning. Sean, if you would call the next testifier, please.
Of course, Chair. Our next testifier is going to be Mark Brushala. If you can turn on your video and begin your testimony, please.
Hello, yes, good morning. My name is Mark Brushala. Thank you, commissioners, for having this outreach. I think this is a really cool opportunity that I only recently learned about to share my feedback. I was actually reading The Stranger that I learned about the 7th District outreach, thanks to Charles Medeiros writing. But I found out about it at the last minute and I registered, but didn't get the Zoom link until the meeting was mostly over. So I sort of lurked in that meeting, and basically my comments are targeted for both the 7th and the 9th districts. I'm a resident of Seattle and I've lived here for about 12 years now. I live on Beacon Hill and I ride my bicycle downtown to work in Smith Tower. And that's on another, that's just across the line into the 7th district. So in learning that, I was actually quite surprised to learn that I live in a district that includes Bellevue, Kent, Des Moines, Tukwila, Federal Way, even into Tacoma, and just a little bit of Seattle, even though I associate and live in Seattle and think of Seattle as my home. And then the 7th has the rest of Seattle, But then also some other cities, Edmonds, Mount Lake Terrace, Vashon Island. I was surprised by all this. So I just think it's kind of an oddity that Seattle is split directly in half along Madison Street. I think most people not aware of the issues would be surprised to learn that depending on which side of Madison Street you happen to be on, you're in a completely different congressional district. I was struck by Commissioner Augustine's comments about keeping districts compact, not splitting county or municipality lines. And I also noted that the population of Seattle, the latest estimate, is about the size of a congressional district. So I think it would make a lot of sense to fork out a new district, the 7th, the 9th, whatever you want to call it, that is just the city of Seattle. Then you don't cross county boundaries, you don't cross municipality boundaries, and then all the conversation, the lovely conversation we've been having about South King and Bellevue, that could be for a completely different.
Sorry about that, Mark. You seem to have muted yourself somewhere along the line there. I encourage you to about the last 10 seconds or so. So if you could submit your comments in writing, we'd appreciate that.
I just said thank you for your time.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. Sean, if you would call the next testifier, please. I think the last on this panel.
Absolutely, Chair. Our last testifier is going to be Jacqueline. I see your video is on. If you can begin your testimony.
Welcome, Jacqueline.
Hello, my name is Jacqueline Jimenez Romero. I'm a resident of South Seattle. I've lived here my entire life. And I'm also a Latina who's heavily involved in my community through organizing and activism. So I would like to say that I know my community pretty well. I would just like to emphasize the importance of keeping communities of color and Indigenous communities together, and also increasing the number of majority POC voting age population in districts. I would just like to give some feedback on the 9th Congressional District and the 37th Legislative District. I personally think that Bellevue and Mercer Island should be removed because there is like a disparity within the wealth and income within that area compared to the rest of like South King County. Instead, I think that Muckleshoot Reservation, Auburn, White Center, and East Burien should be added because there's an increasing amount of POC to that area, and also it includes an Indigenous reservation. And then finally, I think that South Seattle should stick together in the 37th Legislative District, and Beacon Hill should also be all in the 37th Legislative District because it kind of cuts off a little bit into the 11th Legislative District, but I think that all of Beacon Hill should stay in the 37th. And so that's all my feedback. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jacqueline. We appreciate your comments this morning. So I now want to ask the commissioners if you have questions or comments for this panel. All right, seeing none, I would like to excuse the panel. Thank you so much for choosing to be here with us this morning. We recognize it takes time and preparation. We're thankful for you being with us and joining us. Sean, if you could call the next panel, please.
Absolutely, Chair. We are going to begin the next panel with Paul Maffo, Dustin Lambro, Tonya Morris, and Sasha Slayton. So if we can begin with Paul, if you can turn your video and start your testimony. Dustin, I see you have your video on. We'll begin with you and then we'll come back to Paul.
Great. Good. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome. We're glad you're here.
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners. My name is Dustin Lambro. I live in the 33rd Legislative District, and I am a resident of Renton, the town in which my family's lived since the 1890s. I am here in my personal capacity, but for identification purposes, I'm a PCO, political director at Teamsters 117, and president of the King County Labor Council. As I mentioned, I'm in the 33rd. My sister and brother-in-law who reside in Renton are in the 11th. My folks are in Renton, but they live in the 5th LD, and my grandma's in Renton and lives in the 41st. I understand that some cities are larger than a single legislative district, but that's not the case for the city of Renton. According to the Census Bureau, there were a little more than 101,000 people in Renton in 2019, and yet the city split between 4 legislative districts. I strongly encourage you to think about how to keep people who live in the same city in as few LDs as possible. Renton came in number 20 nationwide for cultural diversity, with close to 30% of the city's residents foreign-born. About a third of Renton residents speak a language other than English at home. And according to census data, Renton ranked as the 16th most ethnically diverse city in the entire US. Thank you all for your work on the commission and for taking the time to consider the opinions of citizens, and have a great weekend.
Thank you. We sure appreciate your comments. Sean, if you would call the next testifier, please.
Of course, Chair. Next, we have Sasha Slayton. We have 2 of them in the meeting. So I will begin with the Sasha Slayton that is, their name is lowercase. If you can begin your testimony, please. Sasha, if you're able to turn on your video or audio. And if not, we will move on to Tonya Morris, if you can begin your testimony.
Am I on?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, the computers overwhelmed me. I want to reflect the statements that several people have made about the diversity of the Kent area where I live. I would like to be, as a white woman, a minority in my legislature. I'm sorry?
Please go on. I'm sorry, someone was unmuted. Please continue, ma'am.
All right. And I feel the voices of many of my neighbors are not heard. I'm so proud of King County when you go to get information about voter registration. You may get your information in so many languages, and that is a powerful statement. So I would like the district to be a nice rectangle and not have, or a nice geometric figure, and not have so many quirks on it, and include all of the Muckleshoot so that that voice is unified. Thank you for this opportunity. It's very important.
Thank you, Sasha. We sure appreciate your comments. Thank you for being here with us. Sean, if you would call the next speaker, please.
Of course, Chair, our next speaker is going to be Tonya Morris. If you can unmute yourself and begin your testimony.
Hello, hi, can you guys, hi, my name is, can you see me?
No, but go ahead, we can hear you, go ahead.
Okay, I'm just learning how to do this, okay. Hi, my name is Tonya Morris, and I'm born and raised in Seattle, and I grew up in the Central District, my grandmother, and I would just like to add that, you know, the Central District was our, you know, suburban African-American, you know, area, and it's very diverse now. And being that it's diverse, you know, the population for our community, you know, as far as with the programs that we did have, as far as like the Boys and Girls Club, the CAYA, you know, Garfield, you know, things like that. And it's like being that that it's more diverse now, and that, you know, more whites have come into the Central District, which was our African-American suburban area, that is, we're being, you know, not funded like we should. And most of the kids around here is just, and so most of us in here is low income, and that we're not being, you know, fully funded like we used to in the Central District for recreational for the kids, you know. and the crime, and when kids and teenagers don't have much to do, it leads them into the wrong direction because, we're low income, and it's like, the parents we don't have much money. So, it's like we're undeserved.
Mhm.
And so, and then also too, and I was, I think that we should, at the Congressional, could, I was thinking of a Global Citizen Advisory Board Committee.
So I apologize, Tonya. Your time has elapsed, and I want to ask if one of the staff would be willing to reach out to Tonya and help her to submit her comments by email, if that's the appropriate way, or maybe to help her come to another session so that she can complete her testimony. I would appreciate that. Thank you. Sean, if you would call the next speaker, please.
Of course, Chair. Our final testifier for this panel will be Paul Maffalo. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name. If you can unmute and begin your testimony, please.
Okay, that's Matthew, but people make mistakes. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Welcome. We're glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm a lifelong almost 81-year-old resident of the Puget Sound area, born on Queen Anne Hill, raised in Renton, and lived on the east side for Bellevue primarily for the last 50 years. Somehow, I think there is a little bit of a misconnect. I think Bellevue and Redmond probably should be in the 8th district. It makes a lot of sense to me. I realize there's a lot of, population problems and things like that. But actually, it's kind of interesting. I took a trip to Kent and Renton and Auburn the last couple of weeks. And it really is a totally different scenario in getting more so. So that would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. We appreciate you taking the time to connect with us this morning. And so, Sean, just checking with you, I think completes this panel. Is that right?
Yes, Chair, that does complete this panel. We have one other individual after this.
Great. All right. So I want to ask the commissioners if you have questions or comments for the members of this panel. I am going to break with tradition and ask a question of my own of Tonya. Tonya, are you still here?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So Tonya,
Okay.
in your testimony, you were talking about the gentrification of your community in the central district and the impact it's had on funding. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So, because crime and the kids had more to do, and it's like it's just like it's African American. It's it's like it's just been like the programs that we used to have for our teenagers and our little kids, so they won't steer to the left and go with being followers into the wrong direction.
Yeah. So Tonya, let me just ask you: do you have ideas about how we could help?
Yes. And
please.
I was saying about the Global Citizen Advisory Committee, and it's broken down into I broke it down to regions and communities to have reps in districts and neighborhoods. If we could break it down, instead of the Congressional, and how I see how the Congressional, listening to all the testimonies, how it's broad, and if we could break it down to regions, communities, and have, reps in each of the districts and neighborhoods. That way we can all come together as a committee and then, support our communities, but, and know what is best for our community, because we'll have the reps, and those reps can go door to door, and, and then that way you guys can see more of what's going on in certain neighborhoods and communities, districts, and, regions. But, and then also too,
Okay, thank you, Tonya. I'm sorry, we're out of time for your comment, but I appreciate you being here today, and thank you for answering my question. I sure appreciate that. It's helpful input.
Thank you so much.
So if there are no additional questions for this panel from the commission, nope. Okay, then I would like to excuse this panel, and Sean, if you could call the next. Thank you, members of this panel, for being with us.
So our final testifier, there will be a solo panel, is Satwinder Kaur. If you can turn on your video and begin your testimony.
I'm not able to turn on my video at the moment.
That's okay. We
It's
can.
just okay,
Nope.
thank you.
All right.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
We can
Hi.
see you.
Thank you, commissioners, for this opportunity and all the work you're doing. My name is Satwinder Kaur. I reside in Kent, and I grew up in 9th Congressional District. And I agree with what's been mostly said. I represent Kent as an elected official, but following opinions are of mine, not of my colleagues on Kent City Council. As it's been pointed out, Kent is a very diverse city in our state. And so please be mindful in keeping interest of our communities together. Please try to keep Kent in minimal number of LDs, and if possible, 1 congressional district. And I'm also part of Sikh faith, and our Sikh community resides mostly in 9th Congressional District. They largely reside in Auburn, Kent, and Renton. And I hope you will keep my community's interest in mind and also try to maintain people of color together in 9th Congressional District. Also, I want to point out, please do provide more opportunities for communities to provide feedback when maps are first available, more specifically our ethnically diverse communities in the district. Some of them require translation or actually reach out to them at their places of gathering or their places of faith. So I hope the commission will do I'm sure you are already thinking about it, but you'll do a job of getting in touch with these communities so they can provide their feedbacks as well. Thank you and have a great weekend.
Thank you. We appreciate your time. So this is our final panel. And so I want to ask the commissioners if you have additional questions for Satwinder. Okay. Seeing none, I want to thank you for your time, and you're excused. And I apologize for probably mispronouncing your name. I'm thankful that you're here. Thank you for bringing forward your comments. At this time, I would like to give members of the commission an opportunity to make closing remarks. Just raise your hand if you would like to make closing remarks, and I will acknowledge you. Commissioner Fain.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming out today. It's good to see you, council member, and others that I've known for a long time. I spent much of my life in the 9th Congressional District until the 2010 lines changed that. I'm down here in South King County and have lived here most of my life, and I'm well aware of a lot of the things that the community's brought up today, and appreciate the detailed testimony about different communities. So thank you very much. And I just want to make sure everyone has a very safe next few days because it's going to be a hot one. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Fain. Next is Commissioner Graves. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thanks to everybody who showed up today on a weekend to talk about your communities. It really means a great deal to us. I know it's frustrating for you as it is for us that we don't have the actual data yet, so we don't have maps to comment on, but I can assure you that we're listening diligently and we'll take these into account. And I'll just say, stay safe out there. And also, especially if you have anybody close to you who might be older or has compromised health and might be living alone, please just make sure to check on them, because it's going to be an absolute scorcher for the next couple of days.
Thank you, Commissioner Graves. Commissioner Sims.
Yes, thank you. I'll echo the thanks from my fellow commissioners. I know how much energy and effort folks put into preparing their comments. Want to make sure that folks know that the detailed information and the anecdotal information and the personal information that you all know about your district is really helpful context for us, and information that we can use when we get the final census data, and it provides us with much needed context for some of the data that we will be reviewing. So just thank you everyone for taking the time to testify today.
Thank you, Commissioner Sims. Commissioner Walkinshaw, I see that you're unmuted. Would you like to make some final remarks as well? Thank you. Please do.
Thank you, Commissioner Augustine. And just to echo what my colleagues have said, thank you all for coming out and for the thoughtfulness. I think this discussion raised a lot of important issues that we'll be talking a lot more about. So thank you.
All right. Well, thanks to the members of the commission for being here and for spending this time with us, and for representing the community with diligence and commitment as you do. I'd like to thank the folks who have joined us today. Thank you for your time and your commitment to your own communities. Thank you for being part of this important democratic process. I want to thank our staff for making all of this possible today. And I also want to acknowledge and thank those who are providing interpretation services for us today, both in Spanish and American Sign Language. Thank you for being with us and helping us to keep our commitments to our community. I would now like to adjourn this meeting. Thank you.